All right, we're going to go ahead and shift some gears here. We're going to jump into section 5.1. Here we're going to be talking about fundamental operations. Now, a lot of what we've done up to this point, we've actually already done a lot of this stuff, which is kind of crazy, but we've just been doing it specifically with numbers, mostly just looking at actual numbers and actual operations that are involved with numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Now, the difference here is that we're going to be doing something that involves the use of variables. And so variables are simply just letters that represent an unknown quantity. Now, a lot of times when you start dealing with variables, it can become, there's certain rules that you have to follow, okay? And so here in the notes, you can kind of see some of these fundamental operations and some of these rules. Now, you don't have to have all of these rules memorized. I'm just going to tell you that up front. But I think, like, you don't have to know the names of them, but how they work is really the more important thing. And I think intuitively, most people probably already know how all of these rules actually work. And that would be, like, for example, the commutative property means that I can change the order of things that when I'm adding them together. So if I have like 2 plus 3, that's the exact same thing as 3 plus 2, right? We know they both equal 5, but the order in which you add them together, it doesn't really make a difference in the ultimate result. It's the same idea with multiplication. If I do 3 times 5, I know that's the same as 5 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15, 5 times 3 is 15, and so in practice I can change the order. The associative property, we'll kind of talk a little bit about this because we have to deal with negative signs when we start getting into the examples a bit. But in practice, these things are exactly the same. We can just associate the first two together and the last two together. Distributive property, this is kind of an important one. We'll see quite a bit of the distribution. And what we do in the distributive property is we take the a value and we're going to multiply it by both pieces that are attached or associated right there. Additive identity, multiplicative identity. When we say identity, it means like when you look in a mirror, you see yourself. And so that's kind of the idea with like identity. When you look into the mirror, say you have an A and you want to get A back, what happens? Well, what you do is you are going to multiply it, or add, I should say, 0 to it. Same thing with the multiplicative identity. If you multiply by 0, you're going to get a 0. If you add the opposite sign value to the number, you're going to get a 0 right there. And then the multiplicative inverse. Wow, I can't talk. Same idea. Okay. We will be using quite a bit of order of operations, and so my suggestion would be to go back to section 1.2 if you want to kind of review that. But just to get us kind of kick-started in that vein, let me go ahead and switch over to my whiteboard here. Give me just a minute on this guy. I'm going to close this and switch to my whiteboard. Here we go. Okay. Or blackboard, I guess. So here's some of the problems that we can work on. And we're going to use order of operations just like we did in the first, pretty much, I think it was like the first section we actually covered in this course. So this question, okay, is 3 times minus 5 squared minus 4 times minus 2. Now remember, the important thing is that we need to remember our order of operations, which is our PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay, so we have to work our way through this process to get each of these answers. And so the very first thing, there are no grouped items or parentheses. These technically are parentheses, but because it's being applied to something else, it's not stuff happening inside the group. That's effectively what the parentheses right here means, is that something inside of the group is happening, but it's really not. So we're going to cross that off. However, there are exponents, and we can deal with that one right there. So this is going to be 3 minus 5 squared is going to be a positive 25. And so now we can cross that off. And I'm just going to rewrite this other stuff out. Minus 2. And now as a result, we can go ahead and work out the next piece, which is the multiplication and division. So 3 times 25 is 75. And now right here, I've got a minus 4 times a minus 2, which is a positive 8. And when we add these together, we're going to get 83, which is my solution. Okay. So 83 should be my solution on this kind of problem. All right, let's go ahead and do another one. So this is, actually I just want to point out, this is question number 1 in the text. If you go back in the back end of the book, you can take a look at the questions and kind of follow along. Try to work on them on your own as well. They've got a lot of good sample ones as you read through. 4 times minus 3 divided by a negative 6 minus a negative 18 divided by a 3. Okay, so let's follow our order of operations just like we had above. I like writing this out every single time because it helps me just kind of work through it like a process. And so now I've got 4 times minus 3. Oh, actually, sorry. Let's follow the order of operations. I'm used to doing it in a different way, so it's fine. But the order of operations, we have no bracketed pieces. We've got no exponents. So the very first thing that we have to do is our multiplication and division. So what we can do is 4 times a minus 3, which is a minus 12. I'm not going to do the division yet. I'm going to work on all the multiplications at the same time. And then I'll work on the divisions. Minus negative 18. I can change that to a positive 18 right there. So that technically is a multiplication. The minus and the minus is a plus. You can change that right there. And then we're left with the divided by 3. So I did my multiplication. You can cross the M off. I'm going to do the D now, the division. It's all technically in the same step. You can do it all at the same time, but sequentially, I just kind of like doing one at a time instead of both. So minus 12 divided by a minus 6 is going to be a positive 2. I've got my plus right there. I don't want to do that operation yet. That's the very end. And then I've got 18 divided by 3, which I know is actually going to be 6. So now we can do our addition subtraction at the tail end, and you'll notice that this is going to be just 8. Okay. And there we have it. There's that question. All right, I want to do another one. This one is going to be a little different. So one of the things that we do a lot in algebra is we make substitutions. And so certain numbers, or certain variables, if we know what they equal, we can just change the variables to numbers. So if in this one, for example, I say let x equal 2 and y equal 3, and I give you a problem that says 3x plus y over 3 plus y. Let me fix this here for you. There we go. What I can do in this problem is I can make the substitutions 3 times 2 by changing the x into the number that they gave me up above. So in this problem, now I've got the y, which is a 3. Okay. And then I can divide through by my 3, which was already given to me. And then I take a look at the y, and I can swap that out for a 3 as well. So now we have to do order of operations, but it's a little different. I don't know if you remember back when we went through this, but one of the things that I said was when you have a fraction, you kind of need to treat the top as though it's its own grouped item and the bottom as though it's also a grouped item, okay? So it's almost like that inception idea of like a dream within a dream. You have to work on the operations kind of internal or inside of that grouped item, and then you can work on the division at the tail end. So in this case, now that I've got an order of operations in the top bracket, or in the top parentheses or grouped item, the next thing I need to do is take care of the multiplication. So in this case, I am going to do 6 plus 3, and then this is going to divide by 3 plus 3. And you'll notice that with the order of operations, I try to do them all at the same time. So it's like I'll try to do the multiplication and division of both the top bracket and the bottom bracket at the same time. Then I'll move on to the addition subtraction. So a lot of just solving these kinds of problems just involves the use of a little strategy. So now I can do the addition subtraction, and I'm going to get 9 divided by 6. And so my grouped items are now done, and this is just turned back into kind of its own separate division problem. So this right here, you'll notice this is the same as 3 times 2. Or sorry, 3 times 3. This is 3 times 3. The bottom is 3 times 2. 3 times... See, I just wrote it again. What the heck? It's one of those days, I guess. 3 times 2. And you'll notice that the 2 3s here are going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with a 3 divided by 2. And that's a fraction. You can leave it just like that. If you wanted to convert that into a decimal, it would turn into a 1.5, right? It's 1 1/2. And so this right here would be our final answer, okay? Even though it's an improper fraction, it's completely fine. Usually, actually, it's in algebra, most of what we do in algebra involves the use of improper fractions. All right, let's do another one. I'm going to use the exact same values that were given to me up top. And in this case, I'm going to do 2 times x plus y minus 2x divided by 2 times y minus x. Okay, so in this instance, let me go ahead and erase that. In this instance, it's the same idea. I'm going to take my x's and y's and replace them with the numbers that were given to me up above. So this is going to be a 2 plus a 3 minus a 2 times that x, which is a 2. And then I have a 2 times y minus x, which would be 3 minus 2. Okay? So now I still have to do my order of operations, and this is why, it's helpful just to be able to, as you do these problems more and more, being able to do the order of operations correctly but also quickly, you'll get better at it. And so right off the bat, again, the idea here is that we want to think of these as 2 separate grouped pieces, and we have to do order of operations separately within each of those groups. The very first thing that I see here is that I have a group within a group that's also within a group. So kind of crazy. So I can take care of the 2 plus 3 here by adding those two things up, and then it's going to be multiplied. Whatever I get is multiplied by the 2. So this is going to be 2 times 5, and I've got minus 2 times 2 divided by, same idea on the bottom, I'm going to add that group together, times 1. And now you notice that I've got the grouped items inside of the grouped items taken care of. So these things are done. Now I can move to the multiplication and division. So I've got, in this case, 2 times 5 is 10. Negative 2 times 2 is going to be a negative 4. And then down below, I get a 2. And now once we're done with the multiplication and division, we can move to addition subtraction. So this is going to turn into a 6 divided by 2. And now that I'm done with my groups up top and on the bottom, I can do the last division, which is going to be 6 divided by 2. And in this case, we're going to get a 3. Okay. So again, a lot of this just really comes down to some just good practice, being able to maneuver and move, just understanding the process as you go through them. All right, so this was kind of taking certain values and substituting them in. And what I'd like to do now is just go ahead and let's just look at some variable expressions. So 23, imagine I have 1 over x minus 1 over y. Actually, this one involves substitution as well, so I think I jumped the gun on that one. X times y. Okay, and imagine we have x is equal to negative 1, y is equal to a positive 5, okay? So again, the same idea on this problem is we are substituting these values in. We're going to have 1 over minus 1, minus 1 over 5, plus 2 over negative 1 times 5. Okay. So let's go ahead and work this out. I've got a minus 1. 1 divided by a minus 1 is a minus 1. Minus 1/5. And now this down here below becomes a minus 5. So it's plus 2 over minus 5. Okay? But I want to point something out. This right here is the same thing as minus 1 minus 1/5 minus 2 over 5. You can bring that minus sign, if you have a single one of them, out in front and change the plus sign into a minus. And so, check this out. I need to find, in the problem here now, I need to find common denominators. And you'll notice I've got a 5 here and a 5 there. So in order for us to get a common denominator with the first piece, what I need to do is I need to multiply that minus 1 by a 5 over 5. So in practice, really what this becomes is a minus 5 over 5, which is the same thing as 1, minus 1/5, minus 2/5. You can feel free to use a calculator if you want, just to help you with the common denominators, or you can just punch them in as a fraction, figure out what that is at that point. And now all we have to do is just combine the numerators. So minus 5 minus 1 is going to be a minus 6. Minus 6 minus 2 is going to be a minus 8. So here we're going to get a minus 8 over 5. And this is my solution in this particular problem. Okay, let's do another one. So again, these become a little bit more complicated. 2x y squared z all raised to the second power. And that's if, suppose I have x is equal to a minus 3, y is equal to a 4, and z is equal to a 6, okay? So there's going to be a lot of brackets here. So I'm going to make this into square brackets. That's fine. 2 times minus 3 times 4 squared times 6. And then all of this thing is going to be squared at the end. Okay, it's quite a bit. Sorry about my handwriting. Writing on this tablet is pretty challenging, honestly. It doesn't look anything like my actual handwriting in real life. I don't know why that is, but it's one of those things. So what we're going to do, just like we did in order of operations, we actually have to work on all of the stuff inside of the brackets, in the groups, first, before we do the big exponent at the back end. So one thing that we can do here is we can multiply the 4. Like, let's take care of that internal exponent first. I think that's probably the easiest route. So I've got a 2 times a minus 3 times, this is going to turn into a 16. 4 squared is just 4 times itself, which is 16. We get a 6. And this whole thing is squared, okay? So now we have to multiply all of these numbers out straight in a row. Those are big numbers. We're going to basically end up getting a minus 6 times a 16 times a 6. All of this is going to be squared. And if you do minus 6 times 16 times 6, I would recommend just using a calculator on this one. You're going to get a huge, huge number, and then you multiply it by itself. In fact, let me just go ahead and do this really quick because I didn't write down the intermediate step, and I want to make sure I do that. So 6 times 16 times 6. So this is negative 576 squared. Huge number. And then you square that. So you multiply it by itself, and you're going to get 331,776. Okay, so it's a pretty large number in this instance. All right, let's do one more. I just want to see how, I want you to be able to see how a lot of these problems work. So this is question 30 in the textbook. So imagine I've got x plus 3y all over z squared. And suppose I'm going to give you that x is equal to minus 3, y is equal to a 4, and I'm running out of space here, z is equal to a 6, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and substitute each of these numbers in for my variables. So I'm going to get a minus 3 plus 3 times 4 divided by a 6 in the bottom, and all of that is going to be squared. Okay? So like I said before, you have to kind of treat this fraction like it's its own group. And so here's what we do. We do the stuff on the inside first. Okay? This stuff right here on the inside we're going to work on first and foremost. So if I'm doing order of operations, I always do multiplication before I do addition. So on the inside, I have a minus 3 plus 12 divided by 6, all raised to the second power. Now I can do my addition inside of that piece. Again, remember, it's grouped, so it's kind of like that dream within a dream. So in this case, I'm going to get a positive 9 divided by 6 squared. And I can actually reduce this down. You'll notice really quick that this is the same as 3 times 3. I think we had this exact same thing before. 3 times 2. Okay? And so now what I can do is, you'll notice these two 3's are going to cancel. So I've got 3 over 2 squared. And if you get into a situation like this where you've got a fraction and that entire fraction is squared, all you do is you drop that 2 to both pieces. So that means that this is the same as 3 squared divided by 2 squared, which now this is 9 divided by 4. And that's going to be my solution in this problem. Okay. That's all I have for this section. Again, Chapter 5, we're definitely going to be dealing with more like algebra-related concepts. And so just to kind of prepare yourself, some of these, this is kind of, I would say, more of the complicated stuff in this course, but take your time, work on the homework assignments. If you have questions, feel free to let me know and reach out. And I definitely want to help you guys out as much as I possibly can. So, all right, have a good one. Thank you.